2024 Summer Olympics are set to kick off in Paris this week, and Canada enters the Games looking to build off a Tokyo medal haul that was our best since the boycott Games in 1984. Canadian athletes look strong in the pool and on the track, but there are a number of other participants who could help make this one of our best Olympics ever. I'm Dave Breckenridge, and this is 10-3. National sports writer Dan Barnes joins me to discuss how this Games will be different than the COVID-era Games in Tokyo and Beijing, who are Canada's strongest medal contenders, and who else could find themselves on the podium. Don't forget you can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music. I'd love it if you could leave us a rating, a review, and tell your friends about the show. So Dan, as we're recording this, we're just a couple days away from the kickoff to Paris 2024. Heading into these Games, this is in many ways a return to some semblance of normalcy after two COVID Olympics, the 2020 Tokyo Games, which were pushed to 2021, and the Beijing Winter Games, which were held under some intense restrictions. Will Paris feel like a more normal Olympics, do you think?
I certainly hope so. And I imagine that's the case because, as you said, COVID put its mark all over Tokyo and all over Beijing, just as it put its mark all over the world. And it was an unpleasant experience in Beijing because everything was held inside the so-called bubble. So we were in that city, that great city, for 3 weeks, and we never saw any of it. The athletes, wouldn't have seen much of it either. So it was rare to get out from under the bubble at all. And Tokyo, I covered Tokyo from my basement in Edmonton. So that was another odd one because Post Media, like most outlets, sent very few people on the ground there. So it will be normal. It'll be a great city. Canada is poised to do pretty well, which always makes it more interesting for people to watch on CBC and wherever they're going to consume their Olympic news. So yeah, I think it will be normal, whereas I guess is at least as normal as the 5-ring circus gets.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, Canada's hoping for a strong performance, and heading into Paris, we're coming off our best medal performance at a Summer Games outside of the Eastern Bloc boycott in 1984. We won 24 medals, was it, in Tokyo? Do we get a sense 24. That Canadian Olympic officials are hoping to best that performance, or at least finish on par with 24?
I think 24 is a pretty good number, and I've crunched them all. And Grace Note, the Nielsen company that does the major games predictions, they've got Canada at about 20, I think, in their last set of predictions. So that's maybe a little low. I could see 22, 23, 24, somewhere around there. So many things have to go right. And, the difference between finishing third and finishing fourth can be a centimeter in a throwing event. It can be 100th or 1,000th of a second in a race on the track or in the pool. So you are left to the vagaries of the sport itself. And sometimes you pile up fourths, and sometimes they turn into bronze medals instead, and that inflates your total. But Canada's in a good spot because they've got plenty of potential gold medal winners. And so if they're having a bad day, maybe they settle for silver or bronze, and they don't fall off the podium entirely. So I would not be at all surprised to see them match the Tokyo number. I haven't heard any sort of prediction from anybody at the COC, and they are rarely in the prediction game, so that doesn't surprise me. But yeah, I don't think they're going to take a step back. Let's just put it that way.
Mm-hmm. And, I mean, looking at some of these events in which Canada could fare relatively well, and you broke a lot of this down, nationalpost.com. I think the big one a lot of people are paying attention to is in swimming. And in Tokyo, Canada made a big splash in the pool. Pardon the pun. We had a couple of multiple medal winners, including Penny Oleksiak and Kylie Massey and Margaret McNeil. What are our prospects in swimming this time out? Are there any new medal prospects on Team Canada? Are we expecting strong performances from previous medal winners?
Well, this is going to be the summer of Summer McIntosh. There's no doubt about it. If she decides to race all the events that she potentially could excel in, she could have a fistful of medals, including the relays that rely on her expertise. So, she's a freestyler. She's a butterflyer. She's particularly good in the individual medley that puts together all four strokes. So she's going to win. I think it's a lock that she wins 4. Probably 2 of them are gold. I think maybe there's potential for her to win 5 or 6, depending on the success of the relays. Kylie Moss is a power in the women's 100 backstroke, and Maggie McNeil is the same in the women's 100-meter butterfly. So there's potential for 6 or 7 probably out of the pool. I suspect that gets matched at the track, where Canada is suddenly a throwing nation, believe it or not. And I think, as always, those are the big two. If you do really well in the pool and at the track, that quite often builds momentum, because swimming is the first. Track takes over August 1st, I believe, for the final 11 days. So if you've built some momentum in the pool, and it's a strange thing because I think it's a real phenomenon that success anywhere at an Olympics, if it's, day after day you're winning medals, I think somehow that gives belief to somebody on the cusp, and maybe they give that extra 2% and they wind up on the podium. It's a strange thing, but I believe it's true. So with a good start in the pool, and they're going to have a good start in the pool, I think, again, that 24 medal number, I think that's easily within reach.
Mm-hmm. As you mentioned, Canada usually fares well at the track, and if you look at Tokyo, some of the names that were big for Canada were Andre DeGrasse and Damian Warner. Do we expect to see success from them again at these Olympics? And when you talk about Canada becoming a throwing nation, normally that's, European countries or the Americans tend to do well in some of those events. Like, what's changed for us in that aspect of track and field?
Well, it comes down basically to coaching, I suppose. And you have to have good athletes. You have to find them before they get into hockey or whatever else they're going to get into. And Canada has found Ethan Katzberg, a kid out of Nanaimo, Sarah Mitten, she's from Nova Scotia. Cameron Rogers is from Richmond, BC. Cameron and Katzberg are the reigning world champions in hammer throw. And Sarah Mitten just recently won the world indoor shot put title. So they've all got the pedigree, and they're absolutely in the mix. Damon Warner, his job probably got a little easier because his running mate, Pierce Lepage, cannot compete. He's out with a back injury. And the Frenchman, Kevin Meyer, there's some doubt whether he's healthy. So I think the fight for the top of the podium got a whole lot easier for Warner, and he's certainly in shape. I think he's going to be a force. You got Edmonton's own Marco Arup in the 800 meters. Andre DeGrasse will probably not be a factor in the 100, but could easily be there in the 200. He's the reigning Olympic champ. The men's 4x100 meter relay is absolutely in the mix. You got, on the outside, you've got Evan Dunphy in the 20-kilometer race walk, and Alicia Newman in the women's pole vault. She's shown some pretty good form of late on the Diamond League circuit. So, again, there's 6 or 7 medals potentially if all goes well for Canada there. So, again, that would be a very strong track and field showing.
We'll be right back. Looking at another event taking place on a field, the soccer pitch in Tokyo, Canada managed to win Olympic gold in the women's soccer event and has had strong showings on the global stage in women's soccer over the years. Is there a chance of a repeat, or is Team Canada in a rebuilding phase in women's soccer right now?
Yeah, nobody's giving Canada much of a chance at all. I think they're looking at the post Christine Sinclair era as exactly that, rebuilding. The nations that get most of the love these days in the women's tournament will be Spain, the US, and Germany. Canada, odds makers don't love Canada at all. It may well be one of those where they do okay, finish top 5, top 6, whatever it is. I don't see a medal, but again, it's a crazy game. So if it comes down to penalty kicks and somebody gets lucky and a goalie gets hot, everything changes. But for now, from the outside looking in, and I don't have any great insights about women's soccer, but certainly the experts, so-called experts, and everybody else is not picking them to do particularly well.
Yeah. Looking to another couple of team sports, basketball is an area where Canada is building strength on the court. On the men's side, you have a lot of Canadians now finding success in the NBA. And on the women's side, you have a strong national women's program. Do we have a chance of a medal either in the 5-on-5 standard basketball or even the 3-on-3 tournament?
Yeah, I would say the chances are pretty good for the men's team they're not going to win it. I mean, let's just hand that to the U.S. right now.
Yeah.
We can go ahead and do that. So there's 2 medals up for grabs, and Canada will have a shot at it. I think where they're quite likely to excel is in the women's 3x3, and that's an Edmonton, largely Edmonton-based and largely Alberta-based team with the Plouffe sisters, Michelle and Catherine, as well as teammates Paige Croson from Humboldt, Saskatchewan, and Casey Bosch from Lethbridge. They are they're ranked number 1 in the world by FIBA in the 3x3 ecosystem. They have the top 3 players. I think it goes Catherine, Paige, and Michelle, statistically speaking, and they win a ton. They've won 16 of the 32 FIBA 3x3 events that they've entered since 2019. So they've done particularly well. They go in with a lot of confidence. They really enjoy the game. They, strangely enough, they didn't qualify until the absolute last possible minute in the final qualifying tournament in Hungary against the home side. The last game played that would produce an Olympic berth, and they won it. So they got in by the skin of their teeth, but they're really quite good. So I suspect they're a medal hope. I'm not, I don't have any great insight into the women's tournament there in terms of 5-on-5 hoops, but Canada's program is pretty strong. Again, I think you have to just go and hand the medal to the U.S. But after that, they're in the fight.
Yeah. One of the new sports in Olympic in the Olympics this year is breakdancing, and I suppose
you mean breaking.
Breaking.
They don't call it dancing. It's breaking.
So breaking will be making its debut at the Olympics in Paris in 2024, and I guess it kind of goes in line with gymnastics, right? Like you think of the floor routine in gymnastics is an athletic endeavor where they do a bunch of tricks and they score points and it's set to music. So I guess you could make a comparison that way, that it kind of fits in that realm. So we'll see breaking making it a debut at the Olympics. How does Canada fare? I guess first of all, like what can people expect out of the breaking competition, and then how does Canada fare in that field?
Well, I've watched enough breaking videos now to know that it's a little less like gymnastics and a little more like, I don't know, street fighting without the actual physical contact, because they call them battles. They literally break against one another, and it seems very God, I don't even know the way to put it. There's a lot of posing that goes on, and there's a lot of flexing, and there is no doubt that the routines are incredibly difficult physically to perform. So there's that to it. It's hard for me to look at it as a sport, but it is a competition to be sure. And Canada will do well particularly well, I suppose, on the men's side. A kid named his actual name is Philip Kim, born in Toronto, raised in Vancouver. His competition name is B-Boy Phil Wizard, and he's won a couple of events, big ones, including the Pan Ams. So I think he's world champ, past world champ. So he's certainly gone in with the right pedigree, and I know that Grace Note, that Nielsen company, has picked him to win gold in the B-Boy competition. Perhaps less likely to win a medal on the women's side, but again, it's Olympic sport and anything can happen. But there you go. So Canada breaking into the medals, as it were.
Yeah. Looking at some other events where Canada's traditionally done well or had strong showings depending on the games. You know, your cycling events, your rowing or your kayaking events. Are there any other hopefuls that you're kind of keeping an eye out for in those events or others?
Well, the other one that's going to be the big one will be judo. Looks like Canada's poised to deliver 3 medals, and you know, at least one of those should be gold. There's Catherine Beauchemin-Pinard in the women's 63 kilogram division, Krista Deguchi in the women's 57 kilogram, and Shady Elnas in the men's 100. So they are absolute medal hopefuls. So that could be quite a breakout for Judo Canada. There's at least one, probably 2 medals in rowing. The women's 8s, they are in the fight. And then Jenny Moffat and Jill Cassens in the lightweight double sculls. The International Olympic Committee is eliminating lightweight division, so this is their last kick at that. You got Skylar Park of Winnipeg in Taekwondo. She's one of 16 black belts in her family, so don't pick on them. She's in the women's 57 kilogram division. You got beach volleyball, Melissa Humana Paredes and Brandy Wilkerson. They are perennial contenders. In weightlifting, you got Maj Sharon in the women's 59 kilogram division. So that, you look around and you can count 30 potentials. And of course, they're never always going to come together. In boxing, you got Tamara Thibault in women's 75 kilogram, and Wyatt Sanford in the men's 63.5. We even have Canada even has an archer of note, Eric Peters, in the men's individual recurve. So there are potentials all over the place. If you go to an Olympics with 30 potentials and maybe 24, 22, 23 of them come, get onto the podium, I think that's probably very successful. So I think, again, it's likely to be a good news games.
Mm-hmm. And I know Canadians may not always be watching with the hopes of seeing Canadians win a medal. Obviously, you talk about basketball, you have a lot of professional NBA players showing up there. So there's a lot to watch at the Olympics, but I know Canadians will be pulling for the home country, as it were, in a lot of these events. Dan, thanks for your time.
You bet. Cheers. Thanks.
10-3 is produced by Sean Knox. Theme music by Bryce Hall. Thanks to my guest, Dan Barnes. More from him and more Olympics coverage at nationalpost.com. I'm Dave Breckenridge. Thanks for listening.